what we really are doing from an overview perspective is we're taking an industry that is broken, an industry that has kind of hit some technology points where they just aren't continuing to advance. And COVID has changed the industry. COVID has changed how people think of the industry. And I think back what people used to be okay with, they're not okay with anymore. COVID has changed what people think of. You know, when you think of senior living, most people think of a big building, 100 to 200 beds. You might think of just Sunrise, Brookdale, all of those type companies. They have big buildings, 100 to 200,000 foot type buildings with 100 to 200 people. And that's okay for some. But COVID may have tilted the general public's perspective on those buildings, because when COVID happened, those buildings weren't so proactive at keeping COVID out. And I heard at one point up to about 42% of people that died from COVID were in those buildings. So I think the general public is maybe thinking twice on what the industry is going to be going forward. And a lot of people went to pick up their parents, and they took their parents and they brought their parent home. They wanted their parent to be home. So during COVID, when people didn't have to go to the office, that was fine. They could totally do that. But what you realize now is when COVID is changing things and people are going back to the office, sometimes these family members really can't be at home anymore. Their kids are able to go back to class. The adults that are going to be in the office now, they have to go back to the office. They can't be at home. And sometimes what happens is their parents are at home, sometimes by themselves, and sometimes they think they can cook some food and they forget that the pan is on the oven, and sometimes they burn down part of that kitchen, or the fire department's call. Like, those things happen. Or another thing that happens is they also fall and they hurt themselves. They break a hip, they fall and hurt them. Like, those things happen. That causes the daughters to think maybe she can't be on her own anymore, right? Maybe she's going to need help. And that's really what our company does, but we're doing it in an atmosphere that's not a big 100 to 200,000 foot cold type building. We're doing it in a 5 to 10,000 foot house, which is big, but it's not 100 to 200,000 feet big. We are creating a cozy atmosphere in a home that tells the folks that are in there that you're not dying. So you aren't there to die. You are there to have your final chapter of life, and you are there to be active. You are there to do crafts. You're also there so I think experience the Golden Girl like type atmosphere that I think all of us saw when we were kids, able to grow up. That the Golden Girls is so living together and so experiencing life together compared to on their own. With the only addition of, we've got caregivers, and we also have RNs, and we have people coming in to help provide care that they really can't do on their own. So it's a Golden Girl-esque atmosphere in a very cozy home with excellent care. So one of the things I'll tell you briefly from an operational perspective is when you go to the 100 to 200 bed type buildings, one of the key factual data points that people tend to overlook is that in those big buildings, the common caregiver has to care for 15 to 20 people. That was before COVID. Now, after COVID and kind of during and post-COVID, what you're finding is the average caregiver has to care for 20 to 30 people. And the challenge with that is, could you care for 20 to 30 people properly? Could you change 20 to 30 people? Probably not. And the problem is those big buildings, they're looking to be profitable, right? They want to earn dollars. So what they do is they make the care ratio that they can earn lots of dollars, and that's fine. That's their perspective. I just feel like it needs to be done different, and our company does things different. We have a caregiver to every 5 to 8 people. Why? Because they offer very good care that way, because they can get people changed, and it also creates a very family like atmosphere. When people describe all of our homes, family's typically in there. It's typically the first word that I hear, both from the care team that's in there, but then also the families that are in there. So as well, it is a very family-based atmosphere where the care that is given is very different than a very bigger box building with 100 to 200 people. One of the things you'll also pick up first is the odor in those places with 100 to 200 people. It has a pretty foul odor. Why? Because people have accidents in their pants and they just aren't getting changed. And it's sad, but unfortunately when they don't get changed, it has an odor. And when you're had an accident in your pants and you're sitting in it, like it's an uncomfortable place. So it tends to lead to a pretty poor atmosphere. And if you've ever been in those, you can probably confirm, you probably know the type of care that's given by just the odor. When you come into our homes, one of the things I'll tell you is the cost for all of our homes is equal to all these places. Post-COVID now, our average rate's about $6,000 to $6,500 each month. And that's kind of what the average place is charging. So if you have a choice between going to the general competition where there's a caregiver to every 20 to 30 people for $6,000 to $6,500 per month, or going to our cozy home where there's a caregiver to every 5 to 8 people, which one do you think you would choose with all things being equal financially? $6,000 to about $6,500. 98% of people would choose to come to all their homes. And that's what we're finding. We're finding that people would prefer to come to a cozy home with excellent care. And I feel that we're on the verge of changing the industry.